Okay, now
Okay.
what do I need to do?
Minimize that Outlook,
Say it again.
the dash in the upper right hand corner.
So I can go ahead with my lecture now. Oh, no,
Well, you're right now you're just recording your Outlook
I
screen.
have to get the video on.
Right.
Okay.
Minimize the Outlook.
What the heck happened to the video? Just had it on. There it goes. I get the video on, it goes away.
Right, because you got to minimize Outlook.
I didn't what?
You have to minimize your Outlook.
Okay, now I've got the video on now, but when I hit the uh,
Right.
control box in the middle, it's going to go away. No, it didn't. All right. Now, do you think I'm okay to?
Well, you stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, I've got the video on now. Do you think I can go ahead and start this?
Well, you stop sharing your screen. You're going to have to start that again.
I'm sorry, I still didn't hear you.
Your screen share, your PowerPoint, it stopped. You're not showing anything right now.
The PowerPoints are down here at the bottom. So if I pull them
But
up,
you're not sharing your screen. Right now, the only thing that you're
yeah,
showing is your
right, yeah.
videos.
I was gonna pull them up. So I'm assuming I can go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. All right, just make sure you hit that share button.
Say it again.
I said just make sure you hit that blue share button.
The blue share button. Okay. This big one here, show my.
Yes. Show my screen, yes.
Okay. Now I should be okay to go.
There we go. Now, yeah, you can go.
Okay. I'm sorry to take you through all this, and I don't hear real well, so that's part of the problem.
That's
Okay.
No, that's okay. I'm used to that. I have a history of that in my family, and that's not a
Uh,
problem.
Fudsicle. There we go. I'm losing my video. Now there it goes back. Okay. All right, I'm going to try to do this. All right. Welcome to the first session of Business 101 live audio and video lectures. Probably not tuned in now. I will take care of this and advise you at the end of the session where you can find the find the recordings uh, that we're doing this evening. Blast it. As I mentioned to you earlier today in an email, I'm learning this process and I'm having a few bugs here, which I hope we can work out without too much difficulty. I'm afraid we can't, but we'll keep trying. All right. Yep. Does not want to see. So we will go ahead here and try to move forward with this chapter 1 and understanding business, taking risks and making profit within the dynamic business environment. If you're not familiar with the business or how businesses operate, this course should be very interesting to you. And it is a very user-friendly text that we have. And so I think that it will be beneficial to you. I am using, as you can see, this is just aggravating. Well, I'm going to go through with this, and I hope that we can get this up for you this evening for you to view. I don't usually go through the profiles for the companies, but I think that you will
Excuse me,
find
Rick.
them. Hello?
The PowerPoint went away. It's just your video right now.
Who is it, please?
This is Jonathan. Your PowerPoint went away.
Well, I've got it up. I can see it, but my video is gone. Every time I click on the video, I get that icon in the middle. When I click the icon off, my video disappears. So
It's just going in behind the PowerPoint.
I've clicked on show my screen. There it is again. Hopefully I have that correct now.
There we go.
Okay, I don't know what happened.
Yes.
I got a message.
Click slideshow and then start from beginning in the upper left-hand corner.
Okay, all right. I apologize to you while you're trying to watch this. We're still getting acclimated to this. I'm getting acclimated to it. But I think we can get through this without too much difficulty. You will notice tonight when I go through this that I use the PowerPoint slides to conduct these audio and video lectures. You please make sure that you read the lecture notes that I have embedded for each week because they complement each other. I like to use the PowerPoint slides because it allows me to talk to things. I can bring in experiences that I've had, pass on additional information to you that I may not necessarily have put in with the lecture notes. So this is a combination thing. I will conduct these lectures using the PowerPoint slides, and I encourage you to make sure that you read the lecture notes that I have embedded for each week for each of the chapters, because that will help take you through the process to give you a fuller understanding. Then you should also look at the textbook while you're going through the either through my lectures or when you're reading the lecture notes, because we have a very, I think, user-friendly textbook that does a very good job of making margin notes to help you out to read those things. It's also useful for you to look at the questions at the end of each chapter, because that can help you understand some of the concepts presented in the chapter. The lecture notes, excuse me, the questions that are posed at the end of each chapter are not part of the assignments. I want to emphasize that to you. I do not want you to do those questions and send them to me. What I do want you to do is to do summaries, and the summaries should be in your words. Please do not, 3 times, I hope that that comes across, simply give me what the text has to say. That does not demonstrate any learning or that you've been able to understand the concepts presented. I realize that at times you have to use the text and to use the text words, and that's perfectly okay, but I want that to be at a minimum, because simply telling me what's in the text word for word is simply being like a parrot, and that's not something you want to do. You want to learn about this course, you want to understand the concepts presented in this course, and you want to be able to articulate those in your own words. So that shows that you're understanding the concepts, and you can take those concepts and give them to somebody else, and people will be able to understand what you're saying. These are the learning goals. Describe the relationship between profit and risk and show how business and nonprofits can raise the standard of living for all. Compare and contrast being an entrepreneur and working for others. Now, we're going to spend a lot more time with entrepreneurs when we get to chapters 5 and 6, but this will give you an idea of it. Analyze the effects of economic environment and taxes on business. And we'll talk more about economics and economies and compare and contrast economies in chapter chapter 2 or chapter 3. I apologize. I don't remember which one. And then we're going to look at the effects of technology on business. Business has changed dramatically through the use of technology. Demonstrate how business can meet and beat competition. Analyze the social changes affecting businesses. Look at what businesses must do to meet global challenges, including war and terrorism. That's not easily said or done. So it's something that we're going to have to continually look forward to and look at as we see that. And then look at past trends and how they're being repeated in the present, and how those trends or what those trends mean for tomorrow's college graduates. Goods and services. This is something we talk about in business all the time. A good is a tangible product. That's something you can hold in your hand. You can sense it. You can observe it through all 5 senses. I apologize for this video that I'm having difficulty with. I hope I can keep it up there. A service is something that is intangible. Now, you're going to say to me, an insurance policy is an intangible, but when the insurance underwriter gives me that policy, it's something I can hold in my hand. Yes, it is. I don't disagree with that, but it's still an intangible because it talks about things that are not something that you can visually connect to. It talks about benefits, etc. So it's not something that you can readily put together. The examples that are given here on the slide are education, healthcare, etc., besides insurance, recreation, and travel. And then successfully filling a market. Now, we're going to talk more about markets and what markets specifically mean as we get into the course. That means that you are providing a good or a service, in many cases something has never been provided before, or because your delivery is unique, or because your service is unique, or something of that nature, you're able to provide something to your customers that your competition cannot do. A business is something that we have who actively, notice it says actively promotes, or actively seeks, I should say, to provide goods and services to others and then make a profit. Now, we're specifically talking about businesses that make a profit, and that's what they're in business for. We do have other businesses, like government is in business to some extent. That's the public sector. And of course, we have the not-for-profit sector, which are things like the American Red Cross, the United Way, and entities like that. An entrepreneur is a person who starts a business. And notice what it says here. That person risks his or her time and resources to start and manage the business, a business. Now, often what you'll find is that an entrepreneur will actually start a business, and he will have someone else, or she will have someone else run the business for them. There's a very successful entrepreneur here in the Cincinnati area years ago by the name of Powell Crosley. He probably was the first person who marketed, or his company marketed, a small car. He built a refrigerator that was far ahead of its time. That's what I want to say. He did many other type things that he was able to bring to fruition. However, he was not the business person. It was his brother that made all these things happen. He was the idea guy. And so that's what we're talking here about, an entrepreneur. Yes, an entrepreneur risks time and resources, in this case mostly being money, to bring an idea to the business world and hopefully have it earn a profit. So the last part, I think, of this slide is that what you should take away from this. If you're interested in starting a small business, you're going to become an entrepreneur. Now, you may find that you're actually doing the same type of business as somebody else is in. Now, saying that you're in the same type of business as somebody else is all right, but you have to remember that there are people that are already in business who've been making a livelihood, and you're going to have to do something or some things that set you apart that make people want to do business with you and buy your products and services. It's very difficult to be in business and just be a Me Too guy or Me Too girl. It does not work that well. So you have to be unique. You have to find your own area in which to do business. You have to set yourself apart somehow, some way from your competition. Otherwise, you won't be successful. Revenue and profit. It's very thing that we need to talk about. Revenue is the amount of money a company takes in a specific amount of time from selling its goods and services. Profit is different from revenue in that profit is what's left over after you've paid your expenses. Expenses are salaries, they're utilities, their merchandise or inventory, however you want to call that, or whatever you want to say. It's all sorts of things. For instance, you have fixed costs. Your fixed costs are your utilities, rent on your building, et cetera, et cetera. Those costs are not going to go away. Whether you open your door today or you don't, because we had the snowstorm on Sunday and you couldn't get to your office on Monday, you're still going to pay those costs. So profit is what you have left, what remains after you have paid your obligations, bills. And of course, it talks about salaries and a few other things. A loss is just when you don't have enough money to cover your expenses, or you're not making enough money. Now, risk, and we kind of talked about risk a little bit before when we talked about an entrepreneur. We have to remember that most likely after you started a business and you've been in business for a while and you've been successful, you're probably no longer considered an entrepreneur unless you're doing something else. You're creating new things, you're creating new products, looking for new territory, looking for a new niche, etc. So you're probably a business person. So a business person takes risk all the time. He or she may lose money, they may lose time, the business may not prove to be profitable, etc. So whether we call this person an entrepreneur or a business person really doesn't make a lot of difference. At least it doesn't to me. We're talking about a name here. We can use entrepreneur, and that's fine because we do associate risk with being an entrepreneur and vice versa. Now, we need to say that every business doesn't make the same amount of profit. There's lots of reasons for that. We don't really need to go into them. But we need to understand that if a business expects to make a good profit, it has to take some kind of risk until it becomes established. And then it continues to take a risk because it has competitors it has to deal with. It has changing market demographics it has to deal with. Many, many, many things that have to be considered in this risk business. And whether or not I want to make more money or not. People will say that if you become comfortable in what you're doing, then you're no longer taking risk. probably still taking a risk, but it's been minimized. So it's up to you, Mr. or Miss Entrepreneur. It's up to you, Mr. or Miss Business Owner, to decide how much risk you can accept or tolerate, is a better way to say that perhaps, and then decide how you want to go forward. Normally, pardon me, normally speaking, the younger you are, the more risk you're willing to accept. The older you get, you become a little bit more conservative when it comes to taking risk. Here's how we use our tax money. Hospitals, schools, libraries, playgrounds, roads. You may know that most of our roads in this country are paid for by the gasoline tax. The gasoline tax in the United States, the federal tax has not been raised in 20 years or more. And so we can look at our aging infrastructure. We had a bridge, this bridge that collapsed in Minnesota a few years ago. Cost 35 lives, if I remember correctly. And we have this continual thing. One of the problems that we have with this is that this tax is that Americans do not like to pay tax. We fought a war for our independence because of tax, among other things, but tax was the driving thing. So we have to think about these things when we pay tax, and we say we want to lower our taxes. What is it that you want to give up? Now, when you lower a tax, you're going to have to give something up. There has to be some give and take on this. I'm not here to talk about economics, but I am here to tell you we need to think about those things when we say we need to have our tax reduced. What is it we want to give up? What is it we can do without? Once we can answer that question, then we can do some things. Now, I'm not going to talk about the tax code. Tax code needs to be fixed. We all know that. But we need to think about taxes that we pay. What is it we want lower taxes? What is it that we're willing to give up? The next thing we talk here about is the standard of living. That's the amount of goods and services that we can buy with the money we earn. We need to remember something, that we have what is known as either, you can use either term, either discretionary or disposable income. And what we're talking about, the standard of living, is what we can buy, goods and services, after we've met our obligations. Obligations are utilities, rent or mortgage payment, groceries to eat, clothes to put on our back, etc. Those are all obligations. Once we are finished paying those obligations for a week or a month, however we want to budget that, whatever money we have left over is discretionary money or disposable money, disposable income. And you can do one of two things with that. You can either save it or you can spend it. You can't do both. Now, yes, you can save a percentage and spend a percentage, but you have to remember, what you save, you don't spend, and what you spend, you don't save. So we have to keep that in mind. Yes, we do have a high standard of living in the United States, but we have to consider that we also have an awful lot of people who don't have as good a standard of living as they should, even though they live in a very wealthy country. The next topic we talk about is a quality of life, and that's just our well-being. Notice what it says here. It says we have political freedom, we have an environment, we have good education, access to health care, relative safety, and then the amount of leisure time that we have. That is all those things go into our quality of life. The next topic that we talk about, which is very, very important to businesses, is stakeholders. Stakeholders should not be confused with stockholders. All stockholders are stakeholders, but not all stakeholders are stockholders. So look at the stakeholders we have down here. We have customers, we have employees, we have the stockholders themselves, we have suppliers, we have people in the community, we have the government with elected officials, we have the environment that we have to be concerned with because we only have one, we're not going to get another one, and then people who lend us money. Those are all stakeholders. Those are all people who are interested in the well-being of a business that we either started or the business that we work for. And so one of the constant pushes and pulls is from the business is a business's primary obligation, a business that's in company that's in business to make a profit, is its primary obligation to take care of its stockholders, which means to return, give them a good return on their investment, or is the primary obligation to care for the concerns of all stakeholders? I won't answer that question. I'll let you answer that question yourself. Stockholders are very important. There's no question about it, especially in a public traded company. Privately owned company, privately held company, no, it's not as important. So we have all these other constituencies, if you will, that any business must be concerned with. Now here's a topic, one of the topics that always raises the hackles on the back of every American's neck, and that is outsourcing. That's contracting with other companies to do some of the firm's work. We often think of outsourcing as sending jobs outside the United States. That's not necessarily true. That I will not tell you that that's not the preponderance of outsourcing, but it's not necessarily true. My favorite example of very good outsourcing that happened here with Procter & Gamble and Hewlett Packard. Procter & Gamble decided that it was not in its best interest for it to run its own information technology department. It didn't feel that it had the expertise to do that, and it didn't want to commit the resources to do the things that it needed to do, because that would take away from some of the company's core operations. So it entered into an agreement several years ago with Hewlett Packard, agreement meaning a signed contract, that Hewlett Packard would take over the information technology functions, excuse me, couldn't think of the word for a second, functions for Procter & Gamble. Now this was a win-win situation because Procter & Gamble was able to divest itself of something it didn't feel it had expertise to continue doing, and didn't want to put in the additional money to build up that expertise because it would take away from core operations. Hewlett Packard went in there, they took over the IT department. Everybody who worked for Procter & Gamble in the IT department could stay if they wanted to stay. Hewlett Packard hired everybody that wanted to be hired, and they stayed right in the same place. They didn't move anywhere. So that's outsourcing. Insourcing is the reverse of that. It's when foreign companies open offices and factories in the United States. Toyota down in Georgetown, Kentucky. Toyota has its North American corporate headquarters in Erlanger, Kentucky, which is about 8 miles from where I am right now, relatively close to my home. I live in Kentucky, which is right across the Ohio River. There's a Honda plant up here in Maryville, Ohio. There's another Honda plant over in Greensburg, Indiana. Those are just a few. Mercedes-Benz opened a factory in Alabama. So Volkswagen has a factory in Tennessee. Those are the kinds of things we're talking about here.
Well, you know what? Good luck. I wasn't invited. I was just
Nonprofit organizations, just talked about those for a second a while ago. American Red Cross, United Appeal, number of other organizations that fall in that category. They're not in business to make a profit. Now, one of the things I do want to tell you is that some of their operations may actually make a profit, but the overall organization does not make a profit. And that's they're in business to deliver services for the most part. Might be some product, but they probably won't make that product. They might sell that product, and that's part of the operation that will give them some revenue. But overall, they will not make a profit. These are just some well-known nonprofits in the United States. We won't continue to go through them. This is just a way to keep, we won't spend a whole lot of time about this, keeping strong employees at nonprofits. One of the things that's very important for a nonprofit organization is to find like-minded people, people that have a passion for working for a nonprofit organization. It takes a special type person to work for that, for a nonprofit, and that's what they need to do to continue to be successful. Social entrepreneurs, just exactly what they say. They use business principles to start and manage a nonprofit organization. And it talks here about this gentleman from, I believe he's from India, who won a Nobel Prize for starting this particular type of bank that helps people get started with businesses. By the way, you will, in one of our videos, one of our chapter videos, talks about a company that helps people start businesses in the developing world. I think specifically, as I remember the video, it talks about people starting businesses in Africa, but I don't remember that a specific African country is mentioned. It probably is, I just don't remember. But that's something that is very important, because a lot of times these developing countries don't have the business structure, business acumen to do these type things, and nonprofits can go in there and help people do that. This is just a progress assessment for you to look at. If you pull up the PowerPoint slides on Campus Web, that'll be there too. And I don't spend time doing that. This just gives us an idea here of ups and downs of being an entrepreneur. I think the first one is probably the most important. It's the freedom to either succeed or fail. There's nobody standing behind you and saying, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do something else. Now, yeah, if the banks lent you some money, or you have an angel investor or a venture capitalist, they're going to be concerned about that. And they're going to want you to be successful because they want their money back. But you have that freedom. Nobody's telling you what to do. You can write your own ticket to how much money you want to make, and you can hire your own people. Those are all downs, those are all ups. I gave one of the downs along with the up. You don't have paid vacations. You can take them if you're taking a salary from the company. Some entrepreneurs do that. That's where it's coming from. You're not going to get anything extra. You don't have health insurance. You don't have daycare. You don't have a few other type things. Now, yeah, you can purchase all that stuff, but it does not come from, it's not a perk from the company. And sometimes those costs are a little bit higher than what you would find elsewhere. Question about who takes the entrepreneurial challenge. Really don't need to get into this slide a whole lot. I do want you to notice that minorities in increasing numbers and women in increasing numbers are becoming entrepreneurs. Don't try to read anything into that. What it says is that more of these folks are realizing what used to be considered the American dream was one of the American dreams is starting your own business. And many of them feel that it is more beneficial for them to do that. And more companies are friendlier about loaning minorities and women money to start these businesses. Now, this is just networking for minorities. A spotlight on small business. You'll find that in the text. I commend you to read that. I'm not going to spend any time on it because it really, to me, it is business, but it talks about something else. It talks about networking. And probably businesses don't talk a lot about that, but it's something that's always been successful in business, not only to network, but to find a mentor. And that helps people move along. And that's what this is about. We are going to talk now about the 5 factors of production. Land, labor, that's the people in the workforce, capital, entrepreneurship, and knowledge. Knowledge is recently added because we've learned that the only way we're going to succeed either in business or being an entrepreneur is to have the knowledge to be able to do that. That's why we talk about the concern that we have in this country is having an educated workforce. It's very critical, and it's important. So many jobs today, when the organization is trying to find out how things are being done, et cetera, they'll send a worker a note, email. What are you doing now? Tell us how you're going through this process. Now, email is not difficult, but if you don't know how to operate a computer, it is. So these are the things that we're talking about. That's why it's important to have an educated workforce. Another progress assessment. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but it will help you in what you're doing and how you're going through things. This is what we call the business environment. This slide is not probably real easy to see. If you want to access it in Campus Web, you can. But we have here, starting on the right side, your right as you look at the screen, technology. Then we have the social environment. We have the competitive environment. And then we go up to the economy and the larger environment. This slide talks about I like to say a bone of contention, because there are people that say the government has too many rules and regulations, and then probably in some cases I would not disagree with that. Sometimes we get concerned because we say such things as, well, let the market police itself, et cetera. Well, what we've tragically found out is that the markets don't have the ability to do that. And the reason the markets don't have the ability to do that is because markets are run by humans, and humans are not always correct. We like to think we are, but too often we're not. And we make bad bets and things of that nature, and causes the economic meltdown that most of us saw here in the last and probably felt. Started in late 2007 and kicked into high gear in 2008, and we're slowly still crawling out of that. Probably not quite as bad as what we saw in the Great Depression in the 1929 and through most of the 1930s, but certainly it hit a lot of us, and I think it affected everybody. So government needs to do a wise amount of spending. I mean, it says minimize, but I think you do need to do a wise amount of spending. Certainly not overextend things, but we do have some things we have to think about that we're committed to doing And if we change those, then what are we going to do and how are we going to do that? That's not something that we can, as citizens, directly change, but we can influence that by telling those who represent us in Congress, the United States Senate, what we want them to do. We want to keep taxes at a minimum. Again, remember this, if you keep taxes at a minimum, and that's fine, I have no problem with that. But when you start cutting tax, then what is it you're going to either say I'm going to do without, or what am I going to amend and not be able to provide as much? Allowing private ownership of business, that's what we have in this country. Nobody tells anybody else. The government does not tell somebody what they can and can't do. Now, there's a caveat to that. A caveat to that is we have regulated utility companies, such as gas and electric. Very difficult for somebody to come in and start a new gas company or new electric company. And they usually are going to have to go to the government and say, I want to do this. And the government's going to give them authority to build those plants or whatever happens to be. A few years ago in Ohio, there was an initiative to reduce natural gas prices. So businesses, particularly businesses, could negotiate with a company that was not the local purveyor. And that went on for a couple of years, and I guess it's still going, but I haven't heard about it for quite some time. No interference or minimizing interference with the exchange of goods and services. We have very little of that in this country. We do have this next one, and that is having laws on the books that allow people to enter into enforceable contracts. We'll talk about that later in the course. Currency that's tradable worldwide, the United States dollar is. Minimizing corruption, that's something we always have to be concerned about, but we do probably as good a job as any other country in the world does. This gives you the 5 least corrupt countries, 5 most corrupt countries. There are probably some there that maybe have changed in this. All this is a fairly recent 2011 graphic. Some of that may have changed, and some of the problems that we have in some of these other countries certainly has cropped up. We have seen them today. This is something that we used to do this in a class, and I decided not to use anymore since we have these videos. But this is an ethical thing. You'll find one in each chapter, except for the bonus chapters. This is a little scenario that goes through, and I encourage each of you to look at these and to answer those questions to yourself. It gives you some kind of an idea of ethics, etc., and where you stand and how you stand. Here's the benefits of technology. It's around us. It's changed the way we do business in ways that are very almost not calculable today. It gives us effectiveness. It's allowed companies to reduce the number of managers they have simply because they don't need that extra communication layer. It's promoted efficiency. It's helped with productivity. We talk a little bit about that later in the course with things like computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing. Very difficult to estimate, I think, the impact that these have had on the United States. This is something that JCPenney does. This is social media and business. And you might note that many companies like JCPenney that are older, Sears Roebuck would fall into that category, and Kmart would fall into that category, which is an outgrowth of the old Kresge 10-cent stores years ago, have had problems with keeping up with some of the modern technology of other companies. E-commerce, that's just easy. buying and selling over the internet. How many of you buy things on the internet? We don't need to show of hands here, but just think about that. Done so well. And then we have two concepts down here. B2C is business to consumer, and B2B is business to business. This is an issue that we know we have. Databases and identity theft. We have to be very careful about that. I had somebody, we came to work late Monday because of the snow, and I had somebody call me from somewhere on the other side of the world telling me that I had a problem with my Windows operation. And of course, they wanted me to allow them to get into my computer, which I wasn't about to do. Very serious issue. Something that all companies have to be concerned about. And if you're going to think about starting a business, that's something that you have to consider because you cannot afford to lose your identity. This is just telling you how to protect yourself. I'm not going to discuss on this, but what it does say here is don't click on emails that that are suspicious. You haven't asked for them. People are asking for things. Don't give out any personal information. I don't know if you all are inundated with people telling you that you a long lost survivor or somebody you've never heard of. You're not even, that person probably never even been related to you in any way, shape, or form. And they say, well, if you send me your bank account, we'll send you, usually it's in pounds, 22 million pounds, which is a lot of money, by the way. It's more than $22 million. But all they want to do is get into your bank account. One of the things that is very important for companies to do is to empower employees. And this simply means that a manager is giving his or her employees, or his or her subordinates is a better way to say that, the responsibility and authority to make certain decisions. And we'll talk about empowerment as you go through. If you're in the business major here, business curriculum in the union, you're going to hear about it a lot, empowerment in a lot of your courses. And it's very critical that this be done correctly and be done accurately. What it means is that you are not giving up, you're giving them all the tools and resources necessary to make these decisions. And then if you're the manager, you got to get out of the way. You've got to step back. And if a person makes an error, you don't condemn them on the spot. You go along with it and say, okay, this is done. We need to fix this, and here's how you handle this the next time. Our demographics in the United States are changing. Companies have to stay attuned to that, and it's very important that they know what that is. The Hispanic population in the United States is the fastest growing minority we have, and depending upon whose data you pay attention to, around 2030, about 16 years from now, the white population will no longer be a majority. It will still be the largest group, but it will not constitute over 50% of the population. Now that may change a few years one way or another, but it's going to happen. And it's just a question, not a question of if, it's a question of when. Your demographics in the United States, you can look at this slide. We don't need to go over it, but it talks about people in age groups. That's only age. The next talks about race. Well, this says by 2050. Now, I think it's going to happen a little bit sooner than that. I don't have a crystal ball, by the way, but I've seen other data that said it's going to happen. But 2050, we can use that at 47%. But I'll tell you, if it's going to be 47% in 2050, it'll be less than 50% before it hits that 47%. So we need to back that up a few years. How far back? I'm not sure, but that's the change that we're looking for. And it's the rise of U.S. Hispanic population, largest in the United States is in New Mexico. That's certainly to be expected. California, Texas, and Arizona, Nevada, the next four, those are all to be expected. And then it gives you the fewest percentage around. It mentions Mississippi, but it seems to me that Mississippi is changing. Global changes, more global competition than ever. And that is not going to change. It's only going to get more. We're looking for increasing free trade amongst nations. There's some pluses and minuses to that. I'm not going to get to those, but if we can break down all the barriers to trade in the world, we would find that that boat for everybody would be lifted because the tide would rise. We have a lot of barriers to trade. We have barriers in this country to trade. We keep, by quotas and various and sundry other type things. So we need to really think about those kinds of things and making a commitment to having free trade. This is just a gee whiz thing about the largest cities back in 1950 and those in 2010. There's no American city in the top. Something we have to be concerned about: increasing cost, global environment. Certainly, we still have the war in Afghanistan, which I think the United States hopes to wind down by the end of this calendar year. When we have that, money is diverted. One of the things we have to be careful about, I remember in the 1990s, and I was still in the Army, there was talk about this great dividend we were going to have from not fighting any wars. And the dividend never paid off. So we have to be careful when people say, we got this great dividend coming, and we're not going to have to pay for wars, etc. And we're going to find the military is changing for many reasons, and that is going to play into it as well. These are global greening. We have to be concerned with the environment. We have to be concerned with global warming. I'm not going to get into a debate with anybody who doesn't believe in global warming, but it is here, and we have to pay attention to it, and it's not going to go away. And that's going to do a couple things. It's going to cause a great deal of challenges because I don't think we're ready for it. Now, you can go to places in Virginia today, specifically Norfolk, Virginia, and I used to live in that area, by the way, not in Norfolk, but in Newport News, which is about 30 miles away. And there are streets that are covered by the tide today. Now, not completely, but the tide's in. Now, how did that happen? You can blame it on global warming. If you want to blame it on global warming, and blame it on something else, but it's there. So that's going to create problems. But at the same time, it's going to create opportunities for entrepreneurs, because we're going to have to think outside the box for things to change the way they did. And we find that many companies that are mentioned down there, GE and Coca-Cola, just a few, are adopting green strategies. Procter & Gamble is doing that. Another course that I teach talks about a company by the name of Novo Nordisk that is into diabetes care and what its targets are to reduce its environmental footprint. Of course, we can do this ourselves. There's ways that can do that. Use recycle things and use these things that are recyclable. Less water, less electricity. Now, one of the things that we don't think about in this country, because it's very inexpensive, is we leave all of our appliances plugged in. Well, certainly we want to do that, but think of appliances that you have plugged in. Maybe you don't need to leave plugged in. Unplug them. You're not going to see a lot of savings on your electric bill, but it's going to go down to some extent. Another progress assessment for you. And then we have the evolution of business in the United States. Now, we have gone from the agricultural era, which was from the founding of this country until pretty much the beginning of the 20th century, which we entered the manufacturing era. Then later in the 20th century, we started into the service era, and now we're into the information era, although the service era has not completely gone away, and we're still manufacturing. We're just not manufacturing like we did, and our economy doesn't rest simply on that manufacturing the way it did in the past. Agricultural area, it says 1800s. Well, actually, it was before that. And of course, we had technology there: cotton gin, the harvester, the plow, differently than pulling behind horses, etc. And this has led to unfortunately, fewer small farms and many more large farms. The service area. That's about 70% of the economy today, and it has a lot of high-paying jobs. Service area certainly is what we're using the medium tonight, the internet, and radically changed the way we do things. Technological era, it affects everything. It affects each of those other things. It affects agriculture, it affects manufacturing, it affects the service area, and of course it affects technology itself because it's changing all the time. I'm using a new system tonight that I've used in the past couple of years, and I'm still not comfortable with it. I hope to be before the session is over, and I hope you can bear with me to get me through this. And then this brings us to the end of the first hour, another progress assessment. And we have now reached 5:32, just a little bit later than what I normally like to do, but we had to had some fits and starts here. So let's take an 8-minute break and come back at well, it just changed to 5:33. Let's take still stay with an 8-minute break, and we'll come back at 5:41. Please come back at 5:41. Thank you.
Hey Rick, let's go ahead and end this meet or end this. Hey Rick, let's go ahead and end this meet or end this recording.
What did you say? Hello?
I said let's go ahead and end this recording. And we'll start a new one when you get back. Okay, I'm just going to take a break
for about 5 or 6 minutes. You say we are recording or not?
Right. Okay.
Hey, Rick, this is Jonathan.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, this is Jonathan.
Sorry. Go ahead and start the recording for it.
Go ahead.
Hey, Rick, I'm on the phone with John Gallagher.
Hey, Rick,
Was it
I'm on the phone
recording?
with John Gallagher from the.
Oh, hey, John, go ahead and hit that stop button. Actually, that just paused it. It paused it, not paused it. It paused it, not paused it. Well, I want you to stop.